Okay, so we are continuing on in our series called Mosaic. And just as a reminder, this is our Lent series, and Lent is a season where we acknowledge the human condition, created with a purpose, but fractured, scattered, left with a perpetual feeling of being unable to find and fulfill our purpose. But we celebrate that in Christ, God has the ability to take our brokenness and give us a restored and renewed purpose, just like the graphic of the Mosaic, which is, a number of broken pieces that have been combined together to create something beautiful. And that's the imagery, the symbolism that we speak about during the season of Lent. Our sermon today is called Open Eyes, and we will be in one story the whole time. So it's a story from John chapter 9, one of the more familiar stories of one of the miracles that Jesus performed. Now this is the whole chapter of John 9, so the whole 9th chapter of John that we're going to read. So I'm going to read through this and without stopping, and it's 41 verses. So if you are one of those people who has a hard time focusing for that long, just do your best, all right? It will be on the screen behind me, and then I'll if it helps you to have your Bible in front of you and to follow along, feel free to open up to John chapter 9 or open it up in your phone, whatever kind of helps you to hone in on the story, because it is a long narrative. So, just going to read through it, and then we will talk about it. John 9, verse 1. As he went along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" "Neither this man nor his parents sinned," said Jesus, "but this happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him. As long as it is day, we must do the works of him who sent me. Night is coming when no one can work. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world." After saying this, he spit on the ground, made some mud with the saliva, and put it on the man's eyes. "Go," he told him, "wash in the pool of Siloam." This word means sent. So the man went and washed and came home seeing. His neighbors and those who had merely seen him, or those who had formerly seen him, begged, asking, "Isn't this the same man who used to sit and beg?" Some claimed that he was. Others said, "No, he only looks like him." But he himself insisted, "I am the man." "How then were your eyes opened?" they asked. He replied, "The man they called Jesus made some mud and put it on my eyes. He told me to go to Siloam and wash. So I went and washed, and then I could see." "Where is this man?" they asked him. "I don't know," he said. They brought to the Pharisees the man who had been blind. Now the day on which Jesus had made the mud and opened the man's eyes was a Sabbath. Therefore, the Pharisees also asked him how he had received his sight. "He put mud on my eyes," the man said, "and I washed, and now I see." Some of the Pharisees said, "This man is not from God, for he does not keep the Sabbath." But others said, "How can a sinner perform such signs?" So they were divided. Then they turned again to the blind man. "What have you to say about him? It was your eyes he opened." The man replied, "He is a prophet." They still did not believe that he had been blind and had received his sight until they sent for the man's parents. "Is this your son?" they asked. "Is this the one you say was born blind? How is it that now he can see?" "We know he is our son," the parents answered, "and we know he was born blind, but how he can see now or who opened his eyes, we do not know. Ask him. He is of age. He will speak for himself." His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jewish leaders who had already decided that anyone who acknowledged that Jesus was the Messiah would be put out of the synagogue. That was why his parents said, "He is of age, ask him." A second time, they summoned the man who had been blind. "Give glory to God by telling the truth," they said. "We know this man is a sinner." He replied, "Whether he is a sinner or not, I don't know. One thing I do know. I was blind, but now I see." Then they asked him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" He answered, "I have already told you, and you did not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too?" Then they hurled insults at him and said, "You are this fellow's disciple. We are disciples of Moses. We know that God spoke to Moses, but as for this fellow, we don't even know where he comes from." The man answered, Now that is remarkable. You don't know where he comes from, yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners. He listens to the godly person who does his will. Nobody has ever heard of opening the eyes of a man born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing. To this they replied, "You were steeped in sin at birth. How dare you lecture us?" And they threw him out. Jesus heard they had thrown him out. And when he found him, he said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" "Who is he, sir?" the man asked. "Tell me, so that I may believe in him." Jesus said, "You have now seen him. In fact, he is the one speaking to you." Then the man said, "Lord, I believe," and he worshiped him. Jesus said, "For judgment I have come into this world, so that the blind will see, and those who see will become blind." Some Pharisees who were with him heard him say this and asked, "What, are we blind too?" Jesus said, "If you were blind, you would not be guilty of sin, but now that you claim to see, your guilt remains." All right. Deep breath. So, there is a lot going on in this story. A lot going on in the story. I think, just on the surface, there's a lot going on, right? There's a lot of arguing. There's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of people involved. There's a lot going on even on the surface. But once you get even a little bit below the surface, there is so much going on here that I believe is super relevant even for us today in the way we see the world. So, there are 5 things here that I want us to spend some time on. The first thing we're going to spend some time on is we're going to spend some time on the problem. This is a narrative, it's a story, right? And so this story presents us with a problem, with an issue. This is an incredibly difficult situation theologically. The disciples come to Jesus and they say, "Hey, there's this guy. This guy is well known, and it is known that this guy has been blind since birth." And the disciples ask Jesus a theological question. They say, "Hey, Jesus, this guy has been blind by birth. Why?" That's essentially what they're saying. Why has he been blind by birth? And then they introduce some kind of preconceived notions here. They say, is it his sin? Is he guilty of sin from the time he was born, and that's why he was born blind? Or is it his parents' sin? I mean, these are the 2 options in their mind. But what we can boil it down to is somebody sinned. Somebody did something wrong, and now this man was born blind. So was it his sin, or was it his parents' sin? Essentially, what the disciples are asking Jesus is, hey, there's a problem here. What does this problem say about the way the world works? What does this problem say about God? The disciples ask the question, but it's a question that's on everyone's mind at one time or another. I mean, who amongst us in here has not asked the question? Maybe not why was this person born blind? Maybe not specifically that question. Maybe not whose sin caused this. But we've all asked the question, God, there's a problem. There's a problem that doesn't seem to have any reason for it. Why? Why? Why do we have this? Why are we faced with this problem? The question of religion is this: what is the equation that adds up to this? What is the equation that adds up to this? There's a problem in the world. What is the equation that makes that problem make sense? Has anyone asked that question? God, how does this add up? Would you show me the system that equals this? Religion demands a system to make the world make sense. But it's interesting that the way Jesus answers this question is that he essentially is not interested in the question at all. At least in this moment. At least in this moment, he's not interested in the question of whose sin caused this. He's not interested in the question of why. He's not interested in the question of how does this add up? Make it make sense. That is not the question that Jesus is interested in. The question that Jesus is interested in is, what are we going to do about it? The problem is clear. Now, what are we going to do about the problem? Jesus doesn't give an explanation for the problem. I'm curious, how many of you in here are the kind of person who wants to give an answer? I'm definitely that person. I want to give an answer. If there's a question, I want to give an answer. I want to have an answer to any question that someone might have for me. And I look at Jesus and I look at the way he answers so many of the questions he's asked. And Jesus doesn't feel this pressure to explain it all. I mean, if he wanted to, he could have explained it. He could have said, okay, well, the reason this man is born blind is because this happened, and this happened, and this generationally happened, and then there's these, these genetics, or these things, or this happened in the womb, or this, or that. He could have given an answer. But Jesus was not interested in that answer. What Jesus was interested in is, what are we going to do about this problem? And if we're honest, how many of us would much rather have something done about a problem than just have somebody give us an answer? And so instead of giving an answer, Jesus does what Jesus does, and he heals the guy. And the way that he goes about the healing, he says, neither this man nor his parents sinned. Okay, so he gives a little bit of an answer. Like they're like, okay, who did it? Was it him or his parents? Who sinned? And he's like, neither. That's not the point. But clearly he's not saying neither of them have ever sinned, right? Like they've all sinned. But he's saying that it's not an A plus B equals C. It's not because of the sin that this happened. Instead, he says this happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him. Jesus' answer to the problem is not to give a direct answer to the question, but to approach the situation and to say, how can we solve the problem in a way that brings honor and glory to God? In a way that takes the attention and the focus off of the problem and directs people's attention and focus toward the only one who is capable of fixing the problem. So we have the problem. We also have the one who experiences the problem, the afflicted. We have the blind man. Just imagine for a second that you're blind. You do the same thing every day. You go to this one place and you sit there and you beg. And that's all you know to do. That's the only way you know to solve the problem that you are afflicted with. You go and you sit there and you let others take care of you. And then you probably hear people talking about you on a regular basis, right? You probably hear people like mumbling as they walk by. But in this case, it's pretty blatant. Like, these people are walking by, and they make an example out of him. Hey, Jesus, see this guy? Who sinned to make this guy the way he is? Imagine being the man and being like, are they talking about me? Are these people talking about me? Why are they? And then you are suddenly at the center of a theological debate. Like, you're sitting there just trying to get by, just trying to live, and all of a sudden, you are the center of a theological debate. And you hear people talking about you, and they're like, hey, who screwed up to make this guy the way he is? And you're sitting there like, what? Why are we? I'm just trying to live. Why are you guys talking about me? And then this theological debate happens, and instead of this rabbi engaging in the theological debate, he addresses you directly. He begins talking to you. And not only does he talk to you, but he takes some dirt and he spits in it. This is what I always wonder. Do you think he heard him spit in it? Like, do you think he's like, wait, wait, right? Like, is he about to rub spit on my face? He takes the dirt and he spits in it and he makes mud and he puts it on his eyes. And he addresses him directly and he says, go wash this off. And first you're like, well, why'd you put it on me in the first place? You just want me to go wash it off. But I imagine that this man has not very often been addressed directly. So he's like, whatever you say, man. I'll do whatever you say. I can tell you're a rabbi because these guys asked you a question expecting you to have an answer. So whatever you say, I'll do it. And he goes and he washes and he returns and he can see. He experienced restoration. He's lived his whole life in this state of what society tells him is brokenness because of XYZ, and he experiences restoration. And then what happens? He's immediately put on trial. You experience restoration, you experience healing, and then all of a sudden you're dragged in front of the court and questioned. And it's amazing that in verse 25, so the Pharisees question him. And they're like, hey, tell us about this guy that did this to you, because we're going to just assume that he's a sinner. Because what he did was illegal in terms of the law. He healed someone. He performed a miracle on the Sabbath. Are you kidding me? Why would anyone do that? He performed a miracle on the Sabbath, and therefore he must be a sinner. And the guy's like, I don't know about all that. What I know is I was blind and now I can see. I don't know anything else. I know I was blind and now I can see. I know I was broken and now I'm restored. I'm not here to be a part of your debate. I just experienced healing. I just experienced restoration. Why am I on trial? He experienced the provision of God before he put the pieces of faith together. In verse 25, he says, whether this man's a sinner or not, I don't know, but one thing I know is I was blind, but now I see. And then at the end of the story, when Jesus comes back to him, in verse 38, we have his confession of faith, where Jesus asks him, he says, hey, do you know who the Son of Man is? And the guy's like, I don't know, tell me. And now what Jesus is referencing here is he's referencing the book of Daniel. The book of Daniel talks about the coming of the Son of Man. And what it's referencing is it's referencing the coming of the Messiah, the one who will restore things. And so Jesus asks him, do you know who the Son of Man is? And he's like, I don't know. I don't have any idea. I don't know all this theology you're asking me. Tell me. And Jesus is like, well, you're talking to him. And the guy's like, in verse 38, he says, the man said, Lord, I believe. And he worshiped him. So he experiences restoration. And he says, I don't know how this happened. I don't know the theology behind this. I just know I was blind, but now I see. And then when he's confronted again with Jesus, he says, Lord, I believe. I believe that you are the one who has come to restore because you have restored me. He hasn't put the pieces of faith together when he experiences God's provision. So here's the thing about religious systems. Here's the thing about the systems that we build in order to understand God. We often get things backwards. Often. We often build these systems and these structures that say, all right, once you have your life together, then God will start to bless you. Once you've confessed your faith in him, then you begin to experience his blessings and his provision. But what about stories like this? What about stories like this that flip that on its head? And there's this guy that's he doesn't know his theology. He doesn't have it all together. He doesn't understand anything about what's going on. But all he knows is he was blind and now he can see. And because of that, when Jesus puts the pieces together for him, he's like, I 100% believe that because I have experienced it. He doesn't wait for an explanation. He doesn't wait for things to be put together for him. He doesn't rely on the religious system to tell him, well, here's what happened to you, and it's okay because this and that, and here's what happened to you, and it's not okay because this and that. He experienced the provision of God, and he said, God, Jesus, I believe. I believe because I have experienced it. The third thing we see in the story is we see the neighbors. We see the man's neighbors, right? So Jesus shows up, he addresses the problem, he fixes the problem. And then you have this man who's been afflicted from birth, who's always experienced this thing, who is well known by all of those around him for being broken. And they see it. They see this guy, and they're like, wait, you were broken. How is it that you are not anymore? They're experiencing chaos and confusion. They're like, wait a second, I don't understand what's happening here. and they can't agree on what they're seeing. Some of them are like, yeah, it's the same guy. It's the guy that was blind. He can see now. And some of them are like, no, it's not the same guy. There's no way it can be the same guy. The guy was blind. That doesn't happen. That's not a thing. It has to be somebody different. I don't know why this popped in my head, but have you guys seen like the weird stuff with like Jim Carrey lately? Have you guys seen this? Man, I don't know why I see stuff like this, but nobody can agree on whether or not the Jim Carrey that showed up at this awards show or something in France is actually Jim Carrey. Some people are like, oh, it's Jim Carrey, he just got work done. And other people are like, no, it's not Jim Carrey, it's a clone. It's a clone. They killed him and replaced him, and it's a clone. It's the same thing. This is the same situation, right? It's people looking at this and being like, there's got to be another explanation. There has to be another explanation. It can't be the same guy. They're so reliant on the theological structure that they can't trust their own eyes. They're so reliant on they're wrapped up in this thing also of he was born blind, so there's two options. Either he sinned or his parents sinned. And that's because they sinned, there's no way out of it. That's just who he is. And that's who he will be forever. They're so reliant on that theological structure that they can't even wrap their heads around the fact that maybe restoration actually happens. Man, I'm curious if there's anyone in this room who, when they experienced restoration, when you experienced restoration, did you have people in your life who were like, it can't be real. That can't be real. There's some other explanation here. You're just pretending, right? People are so reliant on their preconceived notion about how God works that they can't even wrap their head around the fact that maybe God actually restores broken people. And then you have the judges. You have the Pharisees. You have the teachers of the law, the religious leaders. And they have to make this event fit in their framework. I mean, they have a religious structure that they rely on heavily. And this does not fit within their religious structure, and so they've got to figure out how to make it fit. I mean, they have people who rely on them. They have people who come to them and they're like, hey, explain this for us. You're the ones that know. Tell us what's going on. And so they have to take their religious system that they've built and they have to fit this event into their religious system. It's certainly not their first run-in with Jesus, right? We've seen in the Gospels, they've had run-ins with Jesus before. And he's already challenged their theology. He's already pushed back on a lot of things. He's already pushed back on a lot of the systems that they've built. So if they admit that what he did, if they admit that he did what the man claims he did, what does that say about the previous challenges? If they're like, okay, we relent, Jesus actually did this, then all of those other things that Jesus challenged them on are suddenly up for grabs too. And if they credit the power to something other than God, well, it can't be God because God wouldn't allow this to happen on the Sabbath. And so it must be something other than God. But if they credit it to something other than God, what does that say about the power of God? That there's something or someone more powerful? Something or someone that can heal on the Sabbath? So, what they attempt to do instead is they attempt to make this man's whole life a mirage. Maybe he was never broken to begin with, right? They start questioning like, oh, and maybe he's just pretending to be blind since the day he was born. Because that's a better option to us. than our religious system crumbling. And they go and ask his parents, like, hey, is this, I mean, you can kind of hear, this isn't your son, right? Like, that's not your son. And his parents are like, yeah, that's our son. You think we don't know our own kid? That's our son. And like, oh, well, he wasn't always blind, right? Like, no, he's been always blind. So when that doesn't work, out of anger, they revert back to the original assumption. Well, someone's sin caused this. I mean, listen to what they say to the man. They have this conversation with the man, and the man's like, hey, listen, I don't know what you guys are saying about. I just know I was blind, and now I see. And I just know, like, hey, if you guys don't even know this guy, and he can do something like this, imagine what God is doing through him. And then they respond in anger, and they say, it says, to this they reply, you were steeped in sin at birth. How dare you lecture us? So they go back to the original assumption. Well, somebody's sin caused this. This whole thing is because of sin, and it must be yours. You've been steeped in sin since birth. Here's the thing. Restoration doesn't make sense for a system that is built on perpetual brokenness. Restoration does not make sense for a system that is built on perpetual brokenness, religious or otherwise. I mean, let's be honest. We have all sorts of systems in our lives that are built on perpetual brokenness. They're built on keeping us in a state of brokenness, or at least keeping us thinking that we're broken, thinking that we need more, thinking that we need something better or something different to fix us. And when religion goes that way, things can get out of whack and out of line. And you can begin to think that the reason you come here each Sunday is because you've been broken throughout the week and you need restoration again. I just had a broken week. I got to get to church on Sunday and get fixed. If that's the kind of system that we are building here, we're out of line with God. Hopefully, the community that we're building here is one where we're not keeping people in perpetual brokenness for our own benefit. We need people to show up on Sunday, so we better convince them they're broken so that they'll come back. Come back and get fixed. Hopefully, what we're building here is a community that is helping people experience restoration so that you can return each week, be encouraged and empowered to go help others experience the restoration you found in Jesus. Yeah, I found restoration in Jesus. And so I don't come continuing to find that restoration. I've already found it. I've already been restored. But how many of you, like me, need that reminder each week that we have been restored so that we can help others find restoration? We've been restored, and now we need to be encouraged. We need to encourage one another and empower one another to go and help the people in our lives find the restoration that we found in Jesus. Hopefully you don't come in here each week just because you need to get fixed. Because once God fixes you, you're fixed. Once God restores you, you're restored. You might need a reminder once in a while, but He's not going to restore you any more than you were already restored. You have been restored. Now live like it. Psalm 103, verses 11 and 12. I had this pop into my head this morning as I was thinking about the idea of restoration versus like this continual need to be restored. Psalm 103, verses 11 and 12, it says this, "For as high as the heavens are above the earth, so great is his love for those who fear him. As far as the east is from the west, so far has he removed our transgressions from us." Now, think about the man who has been accused of being steeped in sin since birth. God is a God who forgives transgressions and removes transgressions. If what he did was punish people's children for their sins by making them blind since birth, how does that up with the fact that he has removed, I'm going to break another glass, he has removed our transgressions as far as the east is from the west? Do you get that picture? As far as how far is the east from the west? Anybody? Infinity, right? The east will never reach the west. It's as far off as something could possibly be. That's how far he has removed our sin from us. We're not paying for the sins of our parents by the way we were born. It's crazy that theology like that could have seeped into the religious systems so deeply. When they knew this, they knew the Psalms backward and forward. How can you know the Psalm? How can you know the Psalm that says he's removed our transgressions as far as the east is from the west and still think that this man is blind because he's been steeped in sin since he was born? And yet their systems are putting this on people. Are we putting this on people, or are we calling people to restoration? And are we reminding one another that we have been restored? And the last thing we have here that we need to talk about is we have the man's family. Now, I imagine, I know a lot of your stories. So I imagine that there are some of you in this room who this part might hit home a little bit for. Because this is a very common situation, what happens with his family. The Pharisees call his parents on the phone. They pick up the phone and call his parents. They have his parents brought in, and then they start asking them questions. They start asking them to explain. They're hoping that what they will say is that, no, it's not our kid, somebody different. But what they say is, we know that he is our son. We know he was born blind. But how can he see now, or who opened his eyes? We don't know. You'll have to ask him. You'll have to ask him about that. It says that his parents said this because they were afraid of the Jewish leaders who already had decided that anyone who acknowledged that Jesus was the Messiah would be put out of the synagogue. That was why his parents said, he is of age, ask him. Now, this concept of being put out of the synagogue, essentially what that means is that his parents, if they were to acknowledge what truly happened, that they would essentially be pariahs in their society. They would be put out of the synagogue, meaning they cannot participate in the community. They can no longer participate in their community. It doesn't just mean, you can't come to this church anymore. It's so much deeper than that. Imagine being so afraid of the religious systems that you can't even celebrate that this son of yours, that you've likely mourned for his entire life, has experienced restoration. This son we've mourned for our son his entire life because we've known that in this culture, he can never have a normal life. He will always be a beggar. He will always be considered unclean. He will never fit in. And all of a sudden, he experiences this restoration, and instead of celebrating it, you're afraid. You're afraid that you, not only will he be outcast, but now you will be as well. Man, I've heard a lot of stories of people, especially here, who have experienced something really similar to this. That's cool that you found your thing and all, but we don't think it's valid. And listen, I'm not trying to throw anybody's parents under the bus, believe me. What I'm throwing under the bus here is the system that is so broken that we can't even celebrate what God is doing. Can't even celebrate that someone has found restoration because there's this broken system that says, no, that's not legitimate. This broken system that says, no, it was on a Sabbath. It doesn't count. And they can't even celebrate because they're afraid that they won't fit in anymore. And the only thing that I would say to that, if you have experienced that situation or had that situation put on you, is don't let it convince you that your restoration is not real. I mean, think about the guy, right? Seeing his parents go through this, and they're like, essentially saying, like, we can't, like, we want to celebrate with you, we can't, though. What he could do is he could be like, well, I guess I'll just go back to pretending I'm blind. Maybe at least it'll keep me in my family, at least it'll keep me close to my parents, and they won't have to be, I'll just pretend I'm blind from here on out. But what he does instead, he's like, I can't get caught up in all this religious, systematic thinking, this theology that is keeping me from experiencing fully the restoration that has been given to me. I can't care about any of that. What I have to care about is that I was blind and now I see. And I'm not going to be quiet about that. And when Jesus asks him, hey, who do you say I am? He's like, I believe. Whatever you tell me, I believe, because I've experienced the restoration that you offered me, and I'm fully going to live in that. And I want to end with this quote from N.T. Wright, who I quote often because I like the way he says things. We're going to move into a time of communion after this, so you guys can come back up. But here's what N.T. Wright says, kind of in summary of this story. It says, at the start of the book of Genesis, God was faced with chaos. He didn't waste time describing the chaos, analyzing it, or discussing whose fault it was. Instead, he created light. And following the light, a whole new world. So here, John wants us to understand Jesus is doing the works of him who sent him. A new chaos is on the way. The night, the darkness, when Jesus would be killed and the world would seem to plunge back into primal confusion. But at the moment, he is establishing the new world of light and healing. After the chaos of Good Friday and Holy Saturday, he will bring the new creation itself into being with the light of the first Easter day. And so what we are seeing here as it relates to the season that we have been in is we are seeing the chaos of the world. We are seeing the chaos of brokenness. We're seeing the chaos of bad religion, bad theology. We're seeing the chaos of people who can't agree on what their eyes are seeing. We're seeing people whose eyes are being opened both figuratively and literally and spiritually. We are seeing God taking chaos and darkness and shedding light on it. But what we also notice is that in the midst of this chaos, in the midst of God shedding light on the chaos is still pushing back. The darkness is still pushing back. And what we experience more than anything during the season of Lent, especially if you are fasting during this season, is you're probably experiencing the darkness pushing back a little bit. You're trying to shed some light on this darkness by saying like, oh, I'm gonna give up some of these things so that I can relate to the feeling that Jesus had of being abandoned. And you feel the darkness pushing back against that light that you were trying to shed. Just like in this story, Jesus does this miracle. He opens someone's eyes and the darkness pushes back. Jesus brings light and the darkness pushes back and says, no, we got to explain this away. We got to fix this with the religious systems. We got to make this fit. And at the end of the story, we have the man who experienced the restoration saying, I don't care about any of that. The only thing I care about is I was blind and now I see. I was broken and Jesus has restored me. And so I hope that wherever you find yourself in this season, that your eyes can be opened to the restoration that God is doing in you, that God has done in you. And that you can find a way to not get caught up in the systematic questions of God, I can feel this, but I need to make sense of it. God, I can feel this, but I can't make sense of it. And that's what I need before I can move on. That's what I need before I can keep striving after you. I need you to explain it first. And I hope that instead what we can find is we can find whatever the man who was healed found and be able to say, I can't explain it, but I'm surrendering to it. I can't explain the restoration. I can't explain the process, but all I can say is that I'm going to surrender to whatever Jesus wants to do in and through me. So I invite you to come and to take the body of Jesus broken for us, the blood of Jesus spilled for us, and let this moment remind you of the fact that He has done everything that needs to be done for you to experience restoration. He's done it all. There's no more steps you need to take. He's done it. And would you come and would you experience it? And then would you be able to say, God, I can't explain it. All I know is I was blind and now I see. I was broken and I've been restored. And then you would go and you would tell. You would go and you would tell. Go and tell others about the restoration that you have experienced. Because everyone needs to experience it. Let me pray and I invite you to come. Lord Jesus, we thank you for your body broken for us, your blood spilled for us. We thank you that you are in the business of restoring what is broken. You're in the business of making the blind see. You're in the business of opening eyes. You're in the business of opening hearts. Jesus, we open our hearts to you today. Would you remind us of the restoration that you've given us? Would you encourage us, empower us to go and to tell? It's in Jesus' name.